As I referenced at the start of the show, the mainstream media are in a lather over yet another alleged Downing Street party smelling Boris Johnson's blood in the water. But do voters actually care? I sent the brilliant GBNews reporters Rachel Sweeney and Bradley Harris out in the northeast and the northwest, the sites of several fallen red wall seats. And worryingly for the PM, they couldn't actually find anyone willing to go on camera and defend him.
It's a true statement. If the investigation finds that it was happening, then it's a bit of an outrage. It's a silly thing to do from the government's point of view. People that should be setting an example.
Well, I think it was absolutely disgraceful. I mean, it's just mixed messages from them. And I used to think a lot about Boris Johnson, but I've just lost all faith in them now.
I feel like I would have quite liked to have had a garden party, to be honest, but I didn't.
It was the wrong thing to do. And it was disgusting.
I have family that I wanted to spend Christmas with that I couldn't. I have old relatives that I couldn't see because I was staying inside to protect them, as we should have all been doing.
They're going to do what they want to do anyways, and especially people in power, they do what they want.
So do you care about the latest Downing Street party allegations? Well, you can email me now, dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me at GBNews, and I've got a poll running there that you can vote in right now too. But to help you make up your mind, let me bring in Richard Tice, who is the leader of Reform UK, Luke Johnson, the entrepreneur and former chairman of Pizza Express, and Nina Mishkov, the broadcaster and author. So, Richard Tice, let me kick off with you from a political point of view. You're saying Boris Johnson has to go over this?
I am indeed, Dan, yes. I mean, I heard thousands of voters on the doors of the by-elections in Bexley and North Shropshire, and as these revelations came out about parties before Christmas, people's anger grew. Boris turned from being an asset into being a liability, and the North Shropshire by-election was wrong. It's the hypocrisy, Dan. When people couldn't see their dying loved ones, they couldn't bury people, they couldn't go to funerals. Here was Boris and his colleagues in Number 10, knowingly having a party, having a gathering, having a load of booze, within an hour of one of his cabinet ministers telling all of us we had to abide by the rules, we had to stay locked down, and if we were lucky, we might be good enough and lucky enough to see one person outside. And it's not only is the hypocrisy, it leads to, Dan, a massive loss of trust in the office of the Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the office of government, our institutions. And I think that's really damaging, really dangerous for our country when people lose that level of trust. It's really serious. And I think for the good of the country, the Prime Minister should resign. I don't think he will, but that's what he should do if he had any integrity, any moral fibre or moral fabric within his body, but he hasn't.
Voters believe there's bigger fish to fry, though?
Well, I hope they do. I think these things come and go, and I suspect, as Richard says, that Boris will not resign and that this mood will pass. Clearly, Boris and the Cabinet are hypocrites. Who's surprised at that? The more important things are things like, for example, huge new energy bills that people are facing, and whether we can truly afford the policies of zero carbon, and also ending restrictions and getting our lives back. And I think if, for example, people are angry at the government, want someone to blame for the misery of the last 2 years, then I think we need to attack the politicians on really serious matters. For example, the business of decanting infected elderly people from hospitals into care homes, spreading the disease into care homes without testing them early on, around the same time in the pandemic, that led almost certainly directly to vulnerable people in care homes getting infected and dying. That's a really serious scandal compared to people having a party.
Nina Mishkov, you disagree, though. You're absolutely outraged, and you think folk will turn on Boris as a result of this party, this particular party in the Downing Street garden.
People have turned already. I mean, if you look at the results of these recent polls, the thing is, Luke may think that it's just a party and who cares, but in fact it goes a long way to showing just the sort of man the Prime Minister is and just the sort of government he has, because the government comes from him. The fish rots from the head down. And he has got around himself a government of yes men, incompetence. But, you know, the whole thing, standards have dropped so far. You know, there should be the standards of honesty, integrity, leadership, accountability. None of these things are embodied in Boris Johnson. And if these parties show people just the depths of the sort of man he is, then that will go a long way to pushing the Conservative Party into getting rid of him, because the British people deserve more than this. On the day of that party, that particular party on May the 20th, apparently there's 7 parties in Downing Street.
12.
Well, exactly. Foreign Office, you count what you like. But on that day, 363 people died. 4,000 people died that week, and they all died, presumably, alone.
Yeah.
That's just one week. That is just appalling.
And Richard, I think that's where I have huge sympathy for folk who are incredibly angry, because we all put ourselves through hell over this time. To me, Richard, though, actually, what this shows is that we should never let the government lock us down again. These rules were so ludicrous, were so inhumane, that it was actually impossible for anyone to follow them, given the folk at number 10 Downing Street weren't even doing so.
Indeed, Dan, we learn that essentially the collateral damage from lockdowns is far worse than actually the disease itself. And what these parties and these gatherings consistently showed was the very people setting the rules realised they were ludicrous, and they weren't afraid of it themselves. So they knew they were locking us down, but they knew actually we didn't have anything to fear, and that's why they were quite happy to have these gatherings, whether it was in someone's office or whether it was outside. And as Nina said, it's the lack of integrity, the lack of accountability, the fact that no one says, I got it wrong, I put my hands up, I've stepped over the line. You know, in the good old days, you know, you would have cabinet ministers, if they got something badly wrong, then they would do the honourable thing and they would resign. And you look here, no one ever resigns, do they? It's interesting, isn't it? The only person voluntarily to resign has been a woman, Allegra Stratton, an unelected woman. But, you know, you look at Cummings with Barnard Castle, he didn't resign. You look at Hancock, he tried to hang on until he was forced out. I think that lack of integrity, that lack of moral fibre within government is deeply, deeply damaging. They think they can just ride above all of us like some sort of elite Conservative class. And I think voters will tell them they can't.
Luke, it's interesting, though, isn't it? Because we have spoken a lot over the past 22 months about these nudge campaigns of fear run by the government. And we now have cast iron proof that no one in government was scared of the virus.
Yeah, and I think your point is well made, that the real issue here is whether the restrictions were effective, whether lockdowns, whether closing schools, whether masks, whether plastic screens, whether wiping surfaces, whether any of it made any difference whatsoever.
It does make a difference.
And of course, people
it does
are
make a difference.
angry, but they failed to look at Sweden, which had very few of these restrictions and has got a lower all-cause mortality last year than virtually any other comparable country in the world.
Higher than all the other Scandinavian countries.
Not last year, no, I'm sorry. All-cause mortality lower than all of those countries.
And Nina, folk like Luke and myself always said we're going to have to look at the pandemic in its totality to actually work out the huge damage that lockdowns wrought in terms of excess deaths at home.
I would argue that the lockdowns, thank God, when we had them originally, prevented far higher death rates, because it makes logical sense.
But we don't know that yet.
Listen, logical sense will tell you that the virus comes to you through the particles in the air, and the more you can keep people away from other people at that point when there are no vaccines, then the better. Otherwise, the death rate would be
Nina,
way higher. You know, you can't get hysterical about lockdowns. Lockdowns are one method that had to be used.
Oh, I can get hysterical about them
I'm sure
because
you can.
they literally make me so angry because no one speaks about the abuse, the suicide, the people dying at home with heart attacks, the people having strokes undiagnosed because they were too scared to go to the hospital. That is lockdown.
Far more people would have died. You cannot say that. I understand about the mental health. I understand about the loneliness. I understand all of that.
But it's not just mental health; it's physical health too.
And physical health, I understand that, and the backlog in the NHS is dreadful. I understand that, but without that tool, it would have been far worse. And the
I
thing
think
is,
time is going to tell.
The thing is, if you can get people to behave...
Luke, you say there's no evidence of that yet.
If you can get people to behave sensibly and responsibly and to take care of their own health and to keep their distance if they feel like it, or to use a mask...
There is no correlation.
That's what Sweden did.
Restrictions.
There are 5 million people who are unvaccinated.
They trusted the people.
Trusting the people. There are 5 million people who are unvaccinated, and there are a lot of other people who are too selfish or too ignorant to take care. The very people who say, we have to get back to normal life, we have to get back to normal, are the people who are preventing us from getting back to normal life, because they are the people who are not being vaccinated and not wearing masks.
Where is the evidence that masks help whatsoever?
Blaming the unvaccinated and non-mask wearers for not getting us back to normal, I think, is completely wrong. We should be blaming the modelers and the doomsday scientists for that. But look, Richard, I want to come to you for a final political question, because obviously politics is at play here. We know from interviews with Nigel Farage, who is, of course, the honorary president of your Reform UK party over the weekend, that he senses your party on the rise because of these ongoing sleaze scandals impacting Boris Johnson. So do you really think, Richard, this is the way for Reform UK to rise in the polls? Don't you think ordinary folk care much more about the cost of living crisis, about the green levies on electricity bills, rather than whether Boris is partying or not?
And we're the only party that says we need, with energy policies, to be net smart, not net stupid. We're the only party saying that we need to use our own gas. Yes, shale gas that the Conservatives promised us 4 years ago they would use. So we need to cut the cost of energy by using British gas.
This is the issue that you're coming for Boris on personally.
We are coming for Boris. We're coming for Boris on the cost of living, the cost of energy, the fact that the Conservatives, they've outsourced all of our energy. We're sending our money to Putin and Macron when we should be keeping it.
But you're saying, but just to clarify, Richard, tonight you're saying Boris Johnson should resign because he attended a party.
Oh, I'm definitely saying he should resign because of what has happened. He won't. He will go into the mayor elections, I'm quite sure. And I think that after the mayor elections, I suspect the Tory MPs will look at what I think will be discussed.
Well, maybe it depends how well Reform UK go in those elections, and we will see.
That's what
that was leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, the entrepreneur, former chairman of Pizza Express, Luke Johnson, and the broadcaster and author Nina Mishkov. Very spirited debate. Thank you so much.